Painting portraits is surprisingly simple when you follow the right process. Today I'm going to show you how to make a grayscale portrait from start to finish using the Evolve Artist method. First, we're going to critique Andrew Donelan's awesome attempt at making a grayscale portrait, and if you would like a critique on your artwork, then you can use the link in the description of this video. My name is Daniel with Evolve Artist, and we show people the path to gaining the skills necessary to create art without limitations. So let's get into it. What's great about Andrew's portrait is that he's very thoughtful about his values, and because of that, you can see an impression of light and shadow emerging on the face, which helps turn the form, right? Look at that nose, it's so three-dimensional. But where Andrew can improve is in accurately assessing light and shadow in the first place. First, he's going to need better reference to have a more clear distinction between light and shadow. And secondly, well, because the reference isn't clear about the light and shadow, Andrew incorrectly chose this as his light and shadow when it really should have been this. And because of that initial decision, it sent Andrew on the wrong path, even though he continued to do a pretty great job with the rest of the process. And we'll unpack all of this in a moment. So to honor Andrew's attempt at making a grayscale portrait using the Evolve Artist method, I will now build this portrait from the ground up, showing you every step of the way using the process that we teach our students in Block 1, the very first part of our program. So I'm going to start off with a blank canvas, and since we're in Block 1, we're not worried about developing our drawing skills just yet, so we would use a transfer to get the proportions right by marking areas where there's a clear shift in value, particularly where the light and shadow would meet. So first, we have to determine what are our lights and what are our shadows. Now, if you look at this reference closely, you'll discover that there are 3 separate light sources shining on his face, which is a big issue. There's this strong light that is overexposed in the photo, but there's also a much more subtle light, which you can see casting some shadows on the eye sockets. And then there's a third light source bouncing off the side of his brow. So having 3 separate light sources just made this portrait way too complex and fractured to be a worthy reference for an exercise in portraiture unless you are already very experienced. And so if you are trying to improve your skills, you need to be just as thoughtful about having good reference as you would be thoughtful about making good paintings. And I can't tell you enough how many times I've seen bad references ruin paintings before the paint even touched the canvas. So keep it simple, and simple lighting is a big part of that. So it's no surprise that this is where Andrew got tripped up. He chose his light and shadow based on this second scenario, but what he really needed was these shadows here from the first lighting scenario. And look at that. If he had done that, he would have nailed the likeness for this portrait. Isn't that crazy? Just that the light and shadow alone can do that. So take the time to acquire good reference material that has quality lighting with a clear distinction between light and shadow. Not only will this help you with the process, but it will also make better paintings. And more importantly, you will learn more efficiently. So back to the process. Find our light and shadow first, and then break it down into 4 values. So we're going from 2 things, light and shadow, to 4 values. Now, maybe you're wondering, why don't we just combine the 2 lighting scenarios together to match the 4 values? And that's not a bad idea in theory, but you're defeating the purpose of the exercise and the method. Remember, the goal here is to learn a method that you can apply to any painting that you make. If you're simply copying the values that you see without understanding why you're seeing what you're seeing or knowing what to do when you understand what you're seeing, then you're not going to learn anything. And when we trust the process, we're going to get a much stronger result than simply copying what we see. So I'm going to choose the first, much more simple lighting scenario. And now I want to assign values to my shadows. The first thing I want to do is find my darkest shadow in the reference. That shadow is going to be my extreme shadow value. It's the darkest value. And then I'm going to look for my brightest shadow. Okay, it's the brightest value of the shadows, among the shadows. And that's going to be the shadow on the face. So that will be my moderate shadow. And for the rest of the shadows, I will compare each one to the extreme and then to the moderate. And whichever one is closest to will become that value. And I'm going to follow the same process for the lights. When you're done, check to make sure that all of your shadows are one of the two darkest values and all of your lights are one of the two lightest values. Remember, we're not just copying what we're seeing, we are making value assessments based on whether something is a light or a shadow. And yes, there is a difference, and yes, it does result in different paintings. And if one of your lights has a shadow value, then you did not follow the process correctly. Next, I'll fill in the background with a value mixture between the extreme and moderate shadow. And this way we can see all four of our values for the objects that we're painting, while the background is a slightly different value than the rest of them. And you can make this mixture by mixing in your darkest value with your second darkest value, the extreme shadow and the moderate shadow. Okay, everything is now in its proper place to take this portrait to a whole other dimension. This is the fun part. Now that I have my values right, we can focus on our edges. Boom! Look at how three-dimensional this suddenly feels. All I did was create gradients where there are form shadows, and where there are cast shadows, I left my edges sharp. And you can watch our video on edges where you can learn more about form and cast shadows, how to see them for yourself, why we give form shadows gradients, why we give cast shadows sharp edges, all of that in this video up here. But look at how strong this is now. There are no eyes, no eyebrows, no details at all. But you could put this in a gallery and people would be staring at it from across the room because the impression of reality is so strong now. And if you're trying this out for the first time, this is where I would recommend that you stop. Okay? Take the victory. If you got this far, take the victory and celebrate with your friends, okay? You just took an entire portrait and simplified it down into just 4 values and then made some gradients in the areas where you knew there was a form shadow just to create this incredible impression of 3 dimensions and a likeness. That's wild, right? But we can take this further, and I'm going to show that to you as well. In block 1, we introduce highlights and reflections to our students, and to create them, we mix 3 what we call admixtures, 3 values that go right in between the 4 main values. And the rule here is that you can go half a step up or down for each of the 4 values. So I'll do that with just the face here. First, I'll go half a step down from my moderate shadow to get these darker areas in. And then I can go half a step up from my moderate shadow and get a whole lot more information in there. Now for my moderate light in the hair, I can do the same, and I mostly just went a half a step up to get these highlights in. And then with my extreme light in the face, I can't go a half step up because the extreme light is my lightest value, but I can go a half a step down to capture some subtle value shifts in the cheek right there. And notice how careful I have been to stick with the process and stay within the limits of the value scale. I refused to let any areas in my shadows have light values and refused to let any areas in my lights have shadow values. And going back to that gallery view, look at how that original impression of light remains so strong. That's what we want. That's what we're aiming for. Now there's a lot more that I could do with this portrait, right? I haven't taken down any of my edges except for those form shadow gradients, but this should give you an idea of just how powerful this process is and just how simple, right? And keep in mind, we don't throw our students into making portraits immediately. We start off simple. And if you want to try this yourself, then I strongly recommend that first you use a ball and a can with a strong, direct light source. Keep the objects simple first and then increase the complexity from there. If you can't do this, if you can't take a ball and a can and assign it 4 values with precise accuracy, then you cannot take a portrait and simplify it down into only 4 values. So that being said, Andrew, I appreciate so much your attempt at this and that you've been applying a lot of the knowledge that we're sharing here in these videos. And I know that it is often easier to overcomplicate things rather than simplify them. And that takes time, it takes practice. But truly, you did a great job with this, all things considered. If you had simply gotten the light and shadow assessment correct from the very beginning, then you would have just taken this whole portrait to a different level. So really great work, especially considering that you don't have the guided experience part of developing your skill. And hopefully this critique has given you some of that guidance, but there are 3 pillars that you need to reach professional level art skills. There's knowledge, guided experience, and determination. And you can acquire knowledge on your own, and you have to bring your own determination to the easel when you work, but without turning that knowledge and determination into experience, and not just any experience, but experience that moves you forward on the right path, you will waste years of your life without the help of the wisdom from the people who've gone before you. And even our teacher Kevin, who was mostly self-taught, didn't get his breakthrough in art until he had critical guidance and knowledge specific to his work from Dorian Vallejo. Imagine what it would be like to develop these skills while having access to a full team of instructors, including Kevin Murphy, getting feedback on every single one of your assignments and being supplied with all the materials that you need so that every step you take on your path is a big leap forward to making incredible art. That's what we do at Evolve. And also, I mentioned the transfers in the process, right? We actually send the transfer images to our students for each assignment so that they don't get tripped up trying to find the light and shadow for themselves. And that's where Andrew got tripped up, right? And so if we can give them a few things, lock that in first, then eventually they can find the light and shadow for themselves. But in the beginning, we're keeping it simple. And even for the reference images, we create our own reference images with a single clear light source, and we send those to our students so that it's just so much easier and the results are just that much better. Anyways, this is close to my heart because I actually spent the last few years helping develop these materials for our students before making these videos. So it's great. And if you would like to subscribe, you are more than welcome to. That way you'll be notified the next time a video is published. And also, if you like this video, then you will be able to find it again more easily and refer back to this process as you're trying it out. And again, try it out with a ball and a cube first. Don't jump into doing a portrait, but you can do it with a portrait, and hopefully this shows you how. So that's it. If you'd like a critique on your artwork, then you are more than welcome to, and you can use the link in the description of this video. And I also put in another link of Kevin talking about those 3 pillars to reach professional level art skills. So I hope this was helpful to you, and I wish you all happy painting.